So I've tried it all, setting alarms back to back, getting well over 8 hours of sleep, but I still can't seem to get out of bed. At least stay out of bed. But here comes Dumbo, a smart alarm system I made for my dumbbell. It's programmed to go off at the desired time just like any other alarm clock, but with just one catch. There's only one way to turn it off. So you guessed it. First thing in the morning, Dumbo's gonna go off, and it's gonna need me to do a certain amount of reps with the dumbbell, and it's gonna be right there counting every single one until finally when I'm on my last one, and by then I would have been wide awake enough to start my day. Quick and simple was how I thought the project would turn out, but from trying to figure out wireless communication, battery conservation, printing the casing, and all the many prototypes along the way, stick along to see just how much went into the making of Dumbo. Hey guys, my name is Visal. Welcome to the channel where I make robotic builds of really anything that comes to mind and making my day-to-day just a bit more fun. So Dumbo really was something I made to help me get better at waking up. Sleep is something I'm sure everyone wants to get better at, to wake up feeling rested and energized. That's the purpose of Dumbo. So let's talk a bit about how Dumbo came to be. So initially Dumbo was planned to be used with a laser distance sensor that works by emitting an infrared laser onto a surface, having that bounce back into the sensor, and then calculating the distance based off the time for all of that to take place. It was thought to be simple. From how high up the dumbbell would be, we would determine a cutoff distance, and one dumbbell was out of that distance, out of range, we would increment a rep counter by a value of 1. And that would keep going on until that rep count was satisfied, and to which the alarm would be shut off. So software-wise, checked, green, all good to go. But hardware-wise, I only found out after I started implementing it. So there were two main problems along the way. The first problem was that the sensor would always have to be pointed straight down to the ground to have a consistent reading. But the problem with that, however, is that my dumbbells have circular weights, which mean it doesn't have a fixed position, which ultimately means I can't just put the sensor straight onto the dumbbell. I thought of the genius idea at the time to have a free-falling housing with Dumbo, which basically meant that if the housing hole of Dumbo was bigger than the dumbbell's bar, it would mean that the only way for Dumbo to be resting on the dumbbell is completely straight down due to gravity. So genius I thought of at the time, right? But that's where problem 2 comes in. Not only does it sway when you're picking up the dumbbell, it physically gets in your way, which means we can't have a consistent reading from the sensor. So that means I would have to scrape the whole idea off the table, and now we're back to square one. I'll lie to you guys a little bit. Initially, Dumbo was planned to be used with an IMU, inertial measurement unit. But the reason why the idea came to my mind only for a split second was because of sensor drifting. Sensor drifting was a major problem for drones back in the day, where the sensors, much like the ones we have today actually, will need to be continuously measuring and calculating the data to know where the drone is at all times, all by itself. The sensor works by measuring angular velocity and linear acceleration, so velocity and acceleration. These are two calculated values over a period of time, meaning that the sensor isn't just going to tell you how much it's tilted or how far it's traveled in distance outright from the sensor. That all needs to be calculated. Because all we really get from the sensor is a rate of change, and that rate of change accumulates. And that's precisely where sensor drifting comes into play. Because even with a little nudge to the data, without any interference, that little mistake will just keep accumulating over and over again until your drone will literally be drifting away. And our Dumbo would have been no different. Turns out all that we needed to do was much simpler, and it wasn't an exciting breakthrough, it was just a oh, that works moment. So how does Dumbo actually work? Connected to the ESP32, the brains of the operation, is an IMU with 3 different sensors, each measuring its own different thing. The only one that we need to know about is the orientation of the sensor's axis. And because our choice of exercise is a dumbbell curl, all we really need to know is when Dumbo is facing a positive orientation to a negative and then back to a positive. So simply put, when that specific sequence plays out, we'll increment a rep counter by a value of 1 and then rinse and repeat until the rep count is satisfied, to which the alarm will shut off. But how does it communicate all that? The ESP32 is equipped for wireless communication in both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and with so many different ways to go about it, I chose to opt for an MQTT communication protocol via Wi-Fi, because I thought it had a fairly simple setup as well as a reliable connection on startup as well. So the next tricky bit that we had to look out for was the alarm system, more specifically the battery. The ESP32 is able to go into a deep sleep mode where battery consumption would be at its lowest and services will be turned off to its most essential with specific requirements needing to be met before it can wake back up. So in our case, I decided to utilize the ESP32's timing system, but it's more so a countdown clock because all that it really receives is a specified amount of time that it would go into deep sleep for, and that's calculated by our broker. What's a broker? In the MQTT communication I mentioned earlier, there exists both a broker and a client. The client is able to both receive and transmit data, while the broker will serve as a server or hub that manages all the data. Let's summarize a bit. The ESP32 isn't always on. It would either be off or in deep sleep. In either case, when it wakes up, it'll automatically connect to the Wi-Fi and send an "I'm awake" to the broker. Once received, the broker will sound the alarm, literally, and tell the ESP32 to start reading the data coming from its sensor, the IMU. And then the program will start counting the amount of reps calculated from the data coming in. So first we would have to choose a wake-up time, to which the broker system will use that to calculate with the macOS's current time to find out just how long exactly that's going to take. So once calculated, that will be then sent off to the ESP32, where it would then go into a deep sleep mode for that specific amount of time, and only until the last second runs out does it then play the alarm system all over again. For a project like Dumbo, I definitely didn't expect to struggle as much as I did, from the multiple trips to Micro Center, spending more time on a notebook than the MacBook. Especially realizing that the plan you had initially thought to work failed, only to then come up with the answer at the exact same time. All in all, Dumbo is a project that definitely opened up my eyes to future projects of what to come, what to expect, as well as what's possible. This video itself is a stepping stone in that journey, so I hope you're as excited as I am to see how far we get in this world of robotics. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. And by then, I would have already been wide awake enough to start my day. And by then, I would have already been wide enough. Whoa! Hey.